Let's get our second session underway. I'm going to be the moderator. Well, I've just had the job thrust upon me. My colleague who can't be here asked me to step in for him. That's why we're a little bit late getting started. This is Problem Solving 101. And so we've lost a little bit of time with respect to our foreseen timetable. And so we've been saying all the time that all along that we've got to be very, very close to our timetable. So Stig, please stay within your timetable. And our speaker has a degree in political sciences and has a degree in journalism and education as well. Since 1973, he's had a medular injury when he was 16 years old, and he spent time in an institution for young people with various functional issues. And within the work he's doing in functional diversity, he's held many different positions, and he's been president of the DPOD, representing people with disabilities in Denmark. He's also been the vice president of the DPOD. And our speaker was part of the Living Munden committee in Strasbourg, and has held various different positions over the years. Our speaker is a member of EDF, or has been a member of EDF, and has worked in his own town and has worked on various topics.
Bienvenido, Steve. Nice to
Stig, I'd like to give the floor to you. We're eager to hear from you.
Yes, just thank you very much, and I hope that you can see my PowerPoint presentation on the screen, and I'm sorry that my Spanish is a little bit rusty, so I think I will be doing my presentation in English. And I hope that everyone can hear what I say. My presentation is on the right to live independently and be included in the community. And it is basically on Article 19 of the CRPD, and how the Article 19 is interpreted by the CRPD committee. And next slide, please. Whenever I am giving a presentation, I will always be speaking on behalf of myself. So it will be my personal interpretation of the jurisprudence of the CRPD that I will be presenting today. So you might hear another interpretation slightly different from mine if you listen to others. But so you have to be sure that you are aware of the fact that I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Next slide, please. Slide number 3. This is, in short, my CV, which is relevant in this position, and I'm not going to go into every detail of my CV, but just to show that I have been living independently and being employed on the ordinary labor market since I got my injury in 1973, and after graduated from the university after have been studying political science. And what is also important here is that I have had an independent living scheme 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year since 1978, where I was released, and I think that the right word is released from living in institutions. And I'm married, and I have a son from one of the previous relationships that I have had. And then slide number 4. The essence of everything regarding independent living is that everyone has the right to live independently within the community, and that all policies and programs and laws and regulations have to be developed and designed in meaningful collaboration with organizations of persons with disabilities. And that is what I will be focusing on today: the right to live independently and the right for organizations to be involved in the decision-making processes within the countries. So it is about Article 4 and Article 33 and Article 19 that I will be focusing. Next slide, please. So now we are on slide 5. The right to be involved as an organization into the decision-making processes within the country is unfolded in the General Comment number 7, which is adopted by the committee at the last session, session 20 of the CRPD committee. And there are 4 things that I would like to highlight, and that is that the involvement of representative organizations of persons with disabilities are including all kinds of organizations, including the representation of children with disabilities and persons with psychosocial or persons with intellectual disabilities. So it is a matter of having access to the decision making by all kinds of organizations. The general comment also explains how we see that parents' organizations can be involved in the decision making, supporting their relatives, but not taking over. So this is not about substituting decision making, but about supported decision making. And the involvement of organizations do allow to be involved in decision making in relation to all matters, and also including the right of the organizations to what I call set the agenda, to be expressing the views, sometimes antagonistic towards one's government. And the basics of why organizations should be allowed to be closely included in the decision-making process is that they have experience on their own body, how it is to be living with a disability, and they are able to explain what I call anecdotal evidence by history, storytelling on how it is to be living with a disability in Spain or in Greece or in Hungary or wherever. Slide number 6. There is always a discussion on what is organizations of persons with disabilities, and I have on this slide I have explained some of the things that are characterizing organizations of persons with disabilities, since it is not defined precisely in the CRPD. So this is about all kinds of organizations that can be constituting representative organizations, and which is that they can also be organized around a cultural issue like access to TV, to social medias, or it could be as representing persons with different kinds of sexual orientation, sexual identity, or intersex, or whatever. So the perspective on how to become an organization representing persons with disabilities can take many forms, and all forms are equally accepted, because it is about the wish of the individual to organize and to be collaborating with others. Next slide, please. Article 19, the right to live independently, is found in Article 19 of the CRPD and is unfolded in the general comment that was decided on by the committee in 2017, describing how to understand the Article 19, because Article 19 is of course not so explicitly or detailed that it can provide for understanding of all elements of how it is to be living independently and to be guaranteed that right in accordance with the human rights. You will also find whenever you go into the jurisprudence of the committee, then everyone can go in and see what kind of questions, list of issues have we made towards state parties, to Spain, to Hungary, to Denmark, to Sweden, to Norway, on matters relating to how to live independently. And we have also provided concluding observations, which is guidance to state parties on how to get closer to live up to the concept of Article 19. And all these things are available on the website of the committee. The starting point is that it is important to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to live in the community to become visible, because otherwise we will be continuing to be the forgotten uh, persons within the society, and we have to be actively participating, because if we are not doing that, then we will be forgotten in the decision-making processes. And that is actually what is happening when people are living in institutions, and that has been the consequence for many, many years. And there is an interrelationship between living in independently in accordance to Article 19 across the CRPD, because it is not just about being able to live independently, but also to be participating on the labor market, in leisure activities, in education, etc. And now we'll go to slide number 8. If we go into the right to live independently, it is about being fully and effectively included within and participating in the society, which was what I was talking about on the previous slide. But it is also about having the right to choose where to live and whom to live together with and how to live. So it is not, well, it is a matter of having the right to choose to live outside institutions. And the right thereby to live no. And when we're talking about institutions, it is important to realize that this institution is not just about the size. The size matters, but any kind of support system which is available to persons with disabilities can actually be organized in a way so that they become institutional in their setup. So if you are not allowed to control those that are assisting you in your house, then you will be institutionalized by the regulations that are put upon you, or the limits that are put upon you. And to be able to participate in the community, you have to have access to accessible transport, accessible information, accessible communication, accessibility in general, and you will also be needing reasonable accommodation which accommodates your specific impairment and eliminates those barriers that are affecting you or limiting yourself into being able to participate in society. And that also includes the availability of sign language interpretation and other forms of personalized support. So to have the right or the ability to be living independently demands that you have access to all these things like public transport, shopping, leisure activities, social medias, etc. And it is also important to be clear on the fact that the community is not your local community, but the community as such. So it is both being able to be living independently in the as well as Madrid, as well as Brussels, as well as, so we have to define community to a much larger extent than that we are normally doing. Slide number 9. Personal assistance is the essence and is what we are requiring to be living independently, especially if we have an impairment of what I would say in quote a certain size, and the personal assistance should be available around the clock, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days per month, but not necessary providing round-the-clock service to the individual, because it needs, I mean, we have to recognize that there will be some kind of assessment of the needs, but the assessment should be in meaningful consultation with the individual. So the assistance that are provided to one should be controlled by the person that are receiving the individual or the assistance, and it can be through contracting with some kind of service provider by own choice, or it should also be able, one should be able to be the employer, him or herself. So this is about being able to control the assistance and not being forced to live up or to follow the rules, sometimes pulled down over the head of the individual by the authorities. The funding for the personal assistance must also be controlled by and allocated to the individual, and provide to the necessary services in accordance with one's life circumstances and preferences. The personal assistance must be recruited, trained, supervised, and managed by the individual. So this is about deciding who is going to be the assistant and what kind of basic needs or education or competences or whatever you require or the individual require has to be determined by oneself. Sometimes persons with disabilities are, in quote, forced to share their personal assistance with others, and that should only be done, something that can be done if you decide it by yourself, because otherwise you will be dependent, you will be institutionalized, because the person will then not be available for you to participate spontaneously in activities in the society.
Stig, necesitamos
Yeah.
que vayas terminando porque vamos muy justos de tiempo.
Bueno, es en inglés. Stig, you have like 2 or 3 minutes for finishing, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next slide, please. There are some.
Number 10 now.
there are some what I would call illegal restrictions, and that is when you put limitations on the right to live independently and are only offering institutions as the only option for living. It is when you reduce the power, the legal capacity of the individual, and it is when you are being provided guardianship instead of supported decision making. It is also when families or caregivers are taking over and controlling your right to choice. And it is when you are not setting up or eliminating institutional setups which are limiting your independent the independent life of the individual. Next slide, please. So, my concluding observation will be, or concluding remark will be, that living independently is the essence of being recognized as an individual with one's own preferences for a life in ordinary settings and environments. And thereby I will say thank you for your attention, and I will of course be available for questions if there is any. And did you notice that I finalized within the 3 minutes? Thank you.